would you like to improve your health and keep your family safe? You're listening to the Healthy Home Hacks Podcast, where we firmly believe enjoying optimal health shouldn't be a luxury. Healthy Home Authorities and husband and wife team Ron and Lisa will help you create a home environment that will level up your health. It's time to hear from the experts. Listen in on honest conversations and gain the best tips and advice. If you're ready to dive in and improve your well-being and increase your energy, you're in the right place. All right, here are your hosts, bowel biologists, authors, media darlings, vicarious vegans, and avocado aficionados, Ron and Lisa Barris.
If you are remodeling, renovating, or building a home, you don't want to miss today's show. Our special guest today is the former co-owner of the San Diego-based design firm, Shaw Watts Design. Jay has been a VP for technical services and special projects at AFM Safecoat since 1994. AFM Safecoat is a leading provider of the environmentally responsible, sustainable, and non-polluting paints, stains, wood finishes, sealers, adhesives, and related green building products. They've been providing 100% toxicity-free, multi-surface solutions for 30 years. Not a licensed contractor, but a dedicated DIYer, he takes the approach of testing every product to determine its health worthiness. Did you hear that? Health worthiness and efficacy.
We've known Jay for years and worked closely with him during the 6 years that we owned greennest.com. Jay is a wealth of knowledge, and as we put together our dream list of podcast guests, Jay was at the top, and he's here to shed some green light on the products we use every day in our homes and office spaces. Since, after all, guys, the EPA states that indoor air on average is 2 to 5 times more polluted than the outdoor air. Let me repeat that. The indoor air in our homes and our offices is 2 to 5 times more polluted than the outdoor air.
So welcome to the show, Jay.
Welcome, Jay. We're so
Ron
excited to have you.
Deja vu. Oh my goodness. Back in the Green Nest days, I would call you some of the trickiest questions and you just throw out the answers so easy, Jay.
First, thank you for having me on the show. I really feel honored to be on the show today. And you're right, Ron.
There you go. That was very modest, Jay. I never said you were modest. You certainly are knowledgeable.
I was always eager to talk to you because I knew you were going to try to throw me a trick question, right? So I had to be really ready for that.
Yeah, Jay always had an answer, and we got so many customer questions because we sold so much of the AFM products and other products. And so it was great. We all learned a lot because the consumers would, just like you guys listening, would have questions that maybe we hadn't thought of before and hadn't approached. So Jay, little encyclopedia, but it's a real treat to have him here today. I know you guys listening are excited, so we're just going to dive right in. So VOCs, volatile organic compounds, which we talk about so much on this show, they pollute the air and they've been linked to respiratory and memory problems. Some paint manufacturers, such as AFM Safecoat, who we're talking to today, eliminate toxic ingredients such as solvents, heavy metals, chemical residues, formaldehyde, and other harmful preservatives from their zero VOC paint. We know AFM Safecoat was originally formulated for physicians to assist chemically sensitive patients, those with chemical sensitivities, and to help in solving the problems associated with something called sick building syndrome, if you've never heard of that. But AFM Safecoat was green before green became mainstream. Jay, can you share with our listeners a little history of AFM?
It goes back all those years. We've been around now close to 40 years. And the original founder of AFM was a paint manufacturer here in Southern California. And in the course of his career, he had exposed himself to all the different chemicals that are used in the architectural coatings world. He was what's called a toll manufacturer, which basically means that if you want a coating to be made, any kind of coating that within regulation in California, you could have him make that for you. And so he was asked by different companies to make all kinds of different coatings. And day in and day out exposure, as you both know, day in, day out exposure to these chemicals can have a huge impact on your immune system. Well, he got sick. And of course, back then, there was no field of environmental medicine at the time. If there were some doctors, there were very few in the country. He was able to connect with the physicians that are in Texas with the American Environmental Health Clinic in Dallas, Texas. And they were able to determine fairly easily, because they knew what work he had been doing, but they were determined what was affecting his immune system in a negative way. And basically they told him, well, you've got to change what you're doing or you're not going to be doing it very much longer. Mm-hmm. He came back to California with kind of this whole new vision about what he needed to do. And of course, what also came to light at the time was his employees. He had about 40 employees and they were calling in sick all the time. Well,
oh
boy, something's connecting here. I'm sick, they're sick. What the heck is going on? Mm-hmm. So he started with his chemist, started to play around with the formulations to try to bring down the toxicity as best they could. And we were fortunate because some of the people that he had met in Dallas when he was at treatment were willing to be what's called canary in the coal mine. Mm. And so we were able to take the initial formulations and go back to these patients and have them tell us whether or not these formulations were going to be acceptable. And of course, there was a lot of no, or they're not. Go back to the lab and work on those. And so over a period of time, it kind of ratchet down the ingredients. We got to a kind of a basic database of ingredients we felt were the most tolerable for the most people. I think what this kind of leads to in the discussion is about the whole idea of chemical sensitivity and what that is. Well, of course, what that simply means is that your immune system, which our immune systems are a wonderful thing that we have here to kind of protect us, but if your immune system is repeatedly attacked by outside forces, in this case, chemicals, your immune system has an ability to kind of fight that off. But if it's too much over a long period of time where you're working in an occupation where you're getting exposed every day, or if there was a massive exposure, anyway, the immune system basically tips over.
Yeah.
And once it tips over, then you wind up being sensitive to a whole bunch of different things.
Yeah. You mentioned the Environmental Health Center in Dallas and
yes.
Dr. William Ray, who a lot of people, if anyone's had chemical sensitivities, they know his name. And that is something that they treated, right? They treated chemically sensitive people. And Dr. Ray discussed something called the rain barrel. So like our bodies are like a rain barrel and they fill up with sustenance coming from everywhere, whether it's the air we breathe, the water we drink, the products we use, the food we eat. And then pretty soon when we have too much toxic overload, there's a crack. That would be like a spill, like a little crack. Maybe that would be an allergy. Maybe it would present itself as an allergy. It's saying, hey, something's a little toxic here. But as you get more and more toxic exposure and your body burden gets too high, that's when you start to have real issues that can be anything from respiratory issues all the way to cancer and chemical sensitivity somewhere in there. And so I think it's a really good thing for listeners to kind of have a visual of that and understand how we go from point A to point Z. There is a process and your body does speak to you. And it is really important to listen to those signs that it's giving you.
I agree. You mentioned the barrel, and I was just thinking exactly that same image of the barrel. I think it's very visual.
William Ray's famous. Yeah. I always think of him when I think of that.
Yeah.
Did you ever meet him? Did you meet Dr. William?
No, I never did. I was in a conference call one time. He passed away a couple of years ago. So I was in a conference call with him, but that's as close as I got. You've seen his books. He's got the two big books on chemical sensitivity. They're both about 2 inches thick each. And if you're of a mind to get into the science of this, it's pretty fascinating.
Yeah. We met him at the Building Biology Conference a couple of years ago.
All right.
Yeah.
The whole issue is very personal because one person within families, one person's sensitivity has nothing to do with another person's sensitivity. And so we see it all the time. And if you remember during the Green Nest days, you would talk to a client who the wife or the husband was sensitive and the other person wasn't.
Right.
And there can be a little bit of a disconnect.
For sure. That's a big issue. I want listeners to really hear that because if you're having issues and someone in your family isn't, or vice versa, that doesn't mean that there's not toxicity in your home and your environment, that we are all different. We all come into the world different and we're raised different. We have different exposures, women versus men. We talked about this on a mold show that we had because a lot of times with mold issues, the same thing happens. Maybe not everyone in the house is sick from the mold, but some people are. And so it always comes back to trusting your intuition and your gut because you do know. You mentioned when you're out of the environment, that's a clue too. You're out of the environment, you feel better. You go back into the environment and you keep getting sick. That's also a sign that, gosh, maybe something's not right with this environment. Maybe I need to look at, instead of just loading up on drugs and pills, maybe I need to look at my environment.
Yeah, I had a real quick story. I was at a local bank or big bank, and an old building, was built in the 60s. And I rarely didn't go into the bank. I usually did my banking outside. But I went into the bank this one day and I'm in there and I'm walking in and go, something's wrong in here. And I was standing in line. I was eavesdropping and the client in front was talking to the teller. And the teller was mentioning that she wasn't feeling good. She had this weird, I come to work and I'm okay. But about middle of the day, I start to feel a little sleepy and kind of headachy. And so when I got up to the front of the line, I said, I'm sorry, I couldn't help myself. I was overhearing what you're saying. And I said, when you actually leave and go home, do you start to feel better? Mm-hmm. And she said, well, yeah, I do. And in the morning, I feel pretty good.
Doesn't everybody feel better when they go home from work, though? Jay?
Yeah, I guess. So, yeah, mostly. I hope so. Well, anyway, so I said, well, I don't know if you noticed this because I got the awareness. I said, I think this building is moldy. I think they got a serious mold problem here.
Did you see visible signs of mold?
I didn't see it, but you know the smell?
Yeah,
sure.
You can smell it.
You can smell it. And I go, there's mold in here. And she goes, oh, really? And I said, this is what's affecting your immune system here. You need to be aware of this. I swear, within a month, it's a big high-rise building. I drove by it and they had put the mold sheathing over all of the building.
Oh, wow, Jay.
Wow. You're like a soothsayer too, Jay.
Oh, my. I couldn't believe it.
They thought they met an angel.
I immediately stopped banking with them.
You're like, I'm not getting moldy exposure.
I won't mention who they are. So I'll protect the guilty.
Oh my God. No, that's great. That is one of those divine timing moments. And don't you guys sell a mold stock?
Actually, we do. We sell, that area of materials is a little tricky because when you're dealing with mold, there's a whole kind of segment of the business. There's a lot of rules and regulations and what you can't do and what you can and can't say. We do make a product that is actually a maintenance sealer. You actually spray it on a surface that's been decontaminated first. Okay. And then the sealer allows that surface to resist any mold or mildew that want to come back. But it's only good for about 6 months and then you got to redo it again. So a lot of people, they want a more permanent solution.
Oh, gotcha.
They've got mold behind their walls. They want to take the walls down, take out the mold, and they want to spray something or decorate or treat it so that once they close it up, they don't have to think about it anymore. And of course, I'm always saying, well, these are kind of the situations where people are trying to put a Band-Aid on something.
Oh, yeah.
And it really makes more sense to me that if we've got some kind of moisture intrusion problem, we need to figure out where that is.
Yeah.
And we need to treat that and get that done instead of worrying.
I feel like that could be our new podcast title, Ron, Get to the Root.
Because I like that.
I feel like I say this on every podcast, whether we're talking about mold or health issues. It's like we live in a society that really likes to mask and treat whatever the problem when symptom is, whether it's something in our home or our health, rather than getting to the root. I know you guys sell the penetrating water stop and all your water barrier non-toxic products. And that's a great example of a product that could actually get to the root and treat the root versus just, hey, what do we see on the surface? Let's try to fix that.
That's a great point, Lise. I'm curious, we talked about trends of this bank that's basically covering itself up, protecting it and getting rid of the mold. But what trends are you seeing right now in terms of home projects and renovations due to the lockdowns? I know we're getting out of the lockdowns, but what did you see and what are you seeing now emerging as we leave the lockdowns?
Well, it's interesting because we saw absolutely no slowdown in terms of our sales. And a couple of things that meant to me, there was people with time on their hands that they didn't expect they would have. A lot of people working at home and the opportunity to kind of take a look at what could be done and what needed to be done. I'm a perfect example of that. My wife was telling me all the time, now it's time for you to get busy on this stuff. Because I was working at home for about 4 months, right at the beginning.
Hey, Jay, were you working? I see a drum set behind you. Were you working?
I don't have any drum sets at home. I keep all my drum sets in my office.
Oh, it's your office. Okay.
Yeah.
Very nice.
No, I have my guitars at home, but I'm not playing those very much anymore. What I'm getting at, Ron, is that there was a lot of time for people to work on projects. And so we saw that people were now getting busy with all of that.
Right.
And there's nothing that I see that's slowing this down post-COVID. I think people are going to continue. As you know, we're having a huge real estate boom right now.
Yeah.
I talked to a good real estate buddy of mine, and he's selling homes where people are bidding it up by hundreds of thousands of dollars. He's selling high-end stuff in Del Mar. Yeah. There might be 10 offers, and everyone's bidding up.
It's crazy, right? Yeah, homes are flying off. Our producer just bought a home, and
but the other thing, just one last thought I'm having, the other side of that equation is this whole tiny house movement.
Yeah, right.
People are, well, of course, the aging of America, we got these families that are shrinking. And so they don't need all the space they used to need. And so now they're downsizing. And so the tiny house movement has took on a huge movement.
I've written some articles on that. And there's a company, Escape Homes. I'll give them a little shout out. Mm-hmm. They do a very sustainable tiny home. Like it's a vacation home, but it's a tiny home. It's under 400 square feet. Mm-hmm. And everything. I mean, they do an impeccable job, not just from a green sustainability perspective, but from a health perspective too. I don't know if you're familiar with them, Jay, but check them out if you are thinking.
Yeah, I haven't heard of that one. I'm kind of interested in that. The other thing, and I don't want to digress from the discussion, but are you guys aware that there are 3D printed homes now? You can actually print a home.
What? No.
You didn't know about that? Oh, no. My. All right. So always kind of looking around at the world of building to see what people are doing. And this is the new thing. And there's a couple of companies that are doing it now, but the one that I'm familiar with is a company out in Texas. They're called Icon, ICON. I haven't talked to any of their people. I've only written them some emails to kind of get into their crib a little bit and figure out what they're about. But they have some excellent videos on what they're doing with 3D printed homes. And one of the things I'm excited about there is the ability, because it's very affordable, this whole housing challenge we have with the homeless.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking this might be a solution. And in fact, they are actually working on a project in Austin, Texas, which they're headquartered in Austin, Texas, of a fairly large homeless community project.
They do. We were there recently and I was shocked how much homelessness downtown.
They're planning to print. It seems so funny to say print houses.
Isn't that
I don't
funny?
get it. I guess my brain doesn't comprehend. Like,
yeah, well, if you go to their website, when you get a chance, go to the website and look at the video and you'll see the whole video and how it's done. It's pretty amazing.
That's bizarre.
Yeah.
I don't really totally understand 3D.
Do you pick and choose what materials you print with? Is that how it works?
Actually, no. Basically what they're using is they're using concrete.
Okay.
And they have the computer set up with the design, and then the machine kind of follows the pattern. All right. And it goes around like this and kind of lays it. Wow. It lays it down in rows. All right. And then you can come in later and you can put stucco over it or plaster over it or whatever you want to do.
Guys, it's a real house. It's not a paper house.
It's not a paper house.
Okay.
You have to put a roof on it. They don't make the roof, but you have to put a roof on it.
And they don't make the roof? That's funny.
The roof is a different.
You're on your own. You can.
Roof is kind of old school. You got to do old school rafters and all that other stuff.
Sure,
but in terms of the basic wall forms, it's all printed and it's pretty exciting. Wow. I see a great future there. Mm-hmm. The cost is incredibly affordable, relatively speaking. I mean, I think they're building these little houses for the homeless for under $5,000.
Oh, wow.
It's crazy cheap. Crazy. Yeah. Now, of course,
hopefully they're non-toxic, Jay. Hopefully they're using healthy materials.
Well, it's a good question because material selection kind of goes that way. And the closer you get to what I would call rock or stone, to me, that's a decision that helps on the health side of the decision. The closer you get to the natural material, I think you're off to a good start.
I think you are. And not only from a health perspective, but from a long-term withstanding, right? I mean, the ancient structures were all made of stone. They're still standing. Yep. Yeah, we have colleagues that Paula and Robert Baker Laporte, who run EcoNest. Yeah. And we've seen him do presentations on just the craftsmanship of homes and how they were built so much better and the beauty and the longevity and how much we'd be better off as a society if we were building the homes like to that high quality. They'd be staying longer. People would be passing them down to their children more. And now you've got homes that can be taken up in a tornado pretty easily because houses are built really quick and they're just put up in a lot of inexpensive materials, which we're going to get into a little bit on this show too. What are some of the issues with these materials that are being used that are loaded with formaldehyde and all of these other chemicals?
Ron, did I get your question answered there sufficiently for you?
You did. I'm trying to figure out. You answered in a way where I got 10 answers, and that was wonderful, though, Jay.
Well, Jay and I talked before the show, and we were laughing so hard because we were like, we're both guilty of the whole, you're working from home, you're more time at home, and all of a sudden you're looking at this house that you really didn't pay attention to before, and you're like, God, that needs painting, or gosh, why didn't I put shelves up there? And so I think everybody's in that boat where the projects were always there, but now we're with more time at home, we're noticing it. And then you start on one and then you go to the next one and then you kind of get on a roll. So I think
the other thing that was really fascinating to me was there were a lot of people doing their own home gardens, planting their own vegetables. And we had an incredible run on one of the coatings that AFM makes called Dino Seal, which is commonly used as a foundation and roofing coating, but it's really good for the planter boxes to keep the soil and the water from migrating into your wood planter box and degrading the wood. So people were buying DinoSeal and sealing the inside of their planter boxes before they put their dirt in.
Yeah.
Very
I
good.
really love that because A, they're growing their own food.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that's a really good thing to be able to do. And just,
Yeah.
it's one of those projects where you really want to do it, but you get distracted.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
You get distracted.
And now with the food getting so franken-food with all the GMOs, I mean, my God, they have GMO salmon now. It's just crazy. I can't even. So it's becoming more and more important to grow your own food just so that you aren't having pesticides and GMOs and all the weird stuff that's showing up in our food. But Jay, you reminded me just now what you said, and I want to tell the listeners this about AFM Safecoat because they may not know, is that your products, most of them create this extremely tight barrier from chemical off-gassing, and it's through this process called molecular bonding. And I know you guys even have independent tests that show that say your Safecoat Zero VOC paint reduces formaldehyde transmission by up to 90%. So this alone, you guys, is reason to use AFM's product. And I know this isn't a commercial or plug and you're not paying for this show, but we really
just love the brand. Yeah, it's a
we
great
love the brand and believe in it. But can you shed a little light on that technology?
I think it was an interesting, not that we went out to do this to actually become what I call a remediation company, because we are asked probably almost 50% of our work now is with people who have made a decision that's not working out for them. And then they need to solve the problem. And so they've come to us to help deal with that. I'm always a little bit saddened that we're having to come in on the back end of a project and take care of it when another decision might have made it easier.
Yeah.
But what we decided we needed to do is, and you alluded to it, Lisa, several years ago, we decided to do a formaldehyde, what we call a FRAT test, a formaldehyde reduction attenuation test. And what we did there real simply, by the way, it's posted on our website on the frequently asked questions page, links.
Okay.
We took a piece of MDF, medium density fiberboard, and we measured exactly what was coming off the surface. It wasn't an ambient air test. And we measured it, got a reading, and then we went through the protocol of using our primer and our paint and then our clear finishes, the 4 clear finishes we tested. We coated the surface with 3 coats, and then we remeasured it, and the reductions were, as you alluded to, very dramatic. In a couple cases, we reduced formaldehyde 100% of the surface.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, even 90 is incredible.
People will ask, well, that's great with formaldehyde, but man, there's like hundreds of other chemicals. How are you doing on that count?
Yeah.
And I said, well, there's literally thousands of chemicals that are used in the coatings world. And then if you have chemical A and chemical B and chemical C all kind of mixing with each other in an evaporative environment, then you've got another kind of compound. And who can possibly figure out what's going on with that? It'd be impossible.
Yeah.
But what we thought would make sense to take aim on formaldehyde, because the formaldehyde molecule is fairly small relative to some of the larger poisonous molecules like benzene, toluene. Their molecules are bigger. Okay. So the concept in real general terms was we're going to build a net, and the net is going to keep formaldehyde from coming up through the net.
Right.
And those bigger molecules, you know, formaldehyde is the size of a pea and benzene's the size of an orange. So that benzene molecule is going to be sequestered. It's going to be blocked too.
Okay.
People say, well, did you prove it? And there's no hard science on it. We don't have the ability to test at that level. It would require a long, really dedicated approach that would be expensive. And so we had to decide.
Yeah.
Everybody
wants to knows formaldehyde. And to be honest, Jay, I mean, it's the most prevalent indoor air pollutant. I mean, we've got it in our floorboards, insulation, paints. I mean, it's even air freshener. It's in so many products in your home. And of course, we're talking about paint and the wallboard and things that you're actually sealing in. So I love that. But Jay, would you be open to taking a call from a caller?
I didn't know we were going to do that, and I'm excited for that. Yes.
All right. All right. Well, we have Heidi on the line. Heidi, are you there? And welcome to the show.
Hello.
Hi, Heidi. I think you cut off a little there.
Sorry. I'm here.
Oh, great. We're so happy to have you. What is your question for Jay?
Just trying to figure out, when you're budgeting for a remodel, you want to be able to do all the things the right way, but a budget is a budget. So how should I prioritize a kitchen remodel? What is would you say like the most dire, most important thing to put on the top of the list and kind of go down from there?
That's a great question.
Yeah, it is a great question. Here's how I talk about it. I like to make the analogy of your interior being like your skin on your body, our biggest organ. And so I always want to make sure, and we're making decisions on where to spend our money and how to spend our money, that we don't cut ourselves short at the end of the project. At the end of the project is all the decoration work. It's painting the ceilings, painting the walls, painting your cabinets, doing your floor. I consider those services to be your skin, all right? And that's where we want to really take care of business. What that can mean is you may be able to make some compromises with other parts of a project. The way, for example, what are we building the cabinets out of? Is there some room to move there in terms of our money? What are we doing for a countertop? Is there something we can do budget-wise that will help us to kind of keep that under control so that when we're ready to do the decorative stuff, we're on top of that, completely on top of that. Kitchens are a pretty big deal, or most probably expensive investments you're going to make in your bathroom and your kitchens, because you've got all those cabinets, very expensive. You've got your countertops, very expensive. So there's a lot of research you need to do, but I would just say, make sure that the last thing you do is the healthiest thing you can do. The healthiest thing you can do.
Yeah.
You know, on a counter, it's what we're spraying on the cabinets. It's what we're spraying on the cabinets. It's the paint on the walls and ceilings. And then your floor. What are you doing with your floor?
Yeah. So Heidi, did that answer your question? Kind of making health a priority, but as Jay's saying, like kind of leave those decisions till the last?
Yes, that makes complete sense.
Okay. So go get that beautiful kitchen and be able to breathe healthy with your, with you, whoever lives with you, your family. Yeah. Well, thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Heidi.
Wow. Well, Jay, as you just witnessed, our listeners are pretty savvy and they know a lot of things out there. For example, they're really familiar with MSDS already.
Yeah.
But can you kind of go into detail about SDS and how this is useful and who is it really for?
Yeah, it was a material safety data sheet. Now they've shortened it to safety data sheets. And the format for those has changed as well. And so now what you'll see a multi-page, can be up to 9 or 10 pages of information, which is all important for the single reason. It's important not so much for the consumer. It's really for people who are in the industry that are exposed to the chemicals day in and day out. And equally important, it's for emergency response. So when someone's looking at a material safety data sheet, most of the time what they're really concerned about, let me look at the ingredient list. I want to look at the ingredient list. And depending on your formulations, depending on proprietary interests in your formulations, and depending on the amount of chemical in the formulation, you're not going to see complete transparency. To be very frank, and I say this in all honesty, I'm not completely what I would, in my term of transparency, say I'm completely transparent, because I have some very proprietary formulations that I don't want anyone to take. I just don't. And I know it could happen. So I have to be careful about that. But at the same time, I say that, but I also say, now, I want you to remember what I told you about my history. And that is those ingredients, whether I divulge them 100% or not, I promise you that I have tested those ingredients with all kinds of people with problems maybe you don't have. And even though they may have VOC, that's the other thing we get another discussion on, but even though there may be some VOC ingredients in there, I've worked that out. People say, do you test on animals? And I go, are you kidding me? I only test on people. I would never test on an animal. Exactly. So I try to buffer that, because I think people now want, it's like food. You want to look at every damn, you might not be able to say the words, but you want to see every ingredient.
Yeah.
And I'm not quite there yet with that. And whether I'll ever be, I don't know, because that's a decision that's a little bit above my pay scale. But nevertheless, I feel real comfortable when I talk, because I have to talk about this all the time with people. I try to be as frank and as honest as I can when I tell them exactly what's going on. But to answer the question, Ron, material safety data sheets aren't really for consumers. They're really for people in the industry and people who are emergency responders. That's really what they're about.
As far as toxicity, don't they really only mention acute symptoms anyway?
Pretty much.
Yeah. Yep. They're not going to tell you like in 10 years, this product's going to cause cancer.
No, there's no long-term. There's no long-term analysis.
You might have respiratory or eye. Yeah. And now legally, Do manufacturers have to show you that if you request it? Or is that optional?
It's pretty much optional.
It is. Oh, wow.
I don't think you have to. I think it's optional.
Yeah. We were talking about, we had a bedding mattress manufacturer, an organic mattress manufacturer. And it was really interesting too. So much of that is they don't have to tell you what flame retardant chemicals they put in the mattress. They only have to tell you, yes, it met the test, the smolder test, the fire retardant test. But, we don't have to tell you what we used, if it was these cancer causing chemicals or not. Obviously, if it's something healthy like wool, they're going to tell you, right?
Yeah, right.
And if they don't tell you, they're probably hiding something.
Right.
So you guys are very transparent. I believe you have the safety data sheets on your website for every product, correct?
Yeah, we do. And we do list the ingredients on it's in section 3 or 2 or 3, section 3, we'll list the ingredients there and their percentages. And of course, they're listed in the order of the volume and the product, right? So you're always going to see with water-based, water is the number one ingredient, right? It's like 60% of the formulation or 40% or whatever it winds up being. And then it goes down from there. That's another thing though. People see an ingredient and they kind of freak out.
Yeah.
One of the ingredients that people kind of get disturbed about is they see titanium dioxide, which is the foundation of the pigment system. It's what makes paint white.
Yeah.
But they see it and they've read about the dangers of titanium dioxide. Well, titanium dioxide in a liquid form is not dangerous. It's when it's in a powder form where it could actually be breathed as a friable dust.
Right.
So then people say, well, what if I'm sanding paint with titanium dioxide in it? Is that dust going to be, attack me? And I generally say, well, if you created a dust storm, if you sanded so aggressively that you had dust flying around, as you know, you've done enough of this, and anyone who's listening knows, you can't sand an acrylic wall paint and get it to dust like that. You can't. It's too rubbery. It's too congealed.
Yeah.
It jams up your sandpaper, but you don't get a huge amount of dust going around. And if you did, wear a mask. But
I think that's a good point, Jay, because we used to get kind of some crazy calls too at Green Nest, like people worrying about the weirdest, strangest, smallest, minute thing.
Yeah.
Where they're kind of missing the pink elephant in the room.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of pink elephants. Not me, I'm wearing pink over here, but I mean, there are your food, your diet, your air, which we call the umbrella to your home, your indoor air quality, and making sure that you do have an air purifier for moments like that where you're going to be having dust and things like that. There's such a bigger, more important point than one day in your life of one tiny exposure to one thing. Those aren't the things that are making you sick. Your body's meant to, it's designed to heal. It's designed to make you healthy. It's the constant bombardment of the exposures is where we really go wrong. So think about that when you're thinking about your remodeling projects or just your home in general. Think about the things that you're being exposed to every day, the plastics that you're using. We could go on, but we would get crazy calls like that. And then I'd be like, are you eating an organic diet? Oh, no. Okay, let's start there.
Yeah, to ask some questions, it could be a little tricky to ask, right? Because it's kind of, you're intruding in their world a little bit. But, you're saying something really important, Lisa, and that is sometimes it's an all hands on deck approach. And what I mean by that is not only are we making decisions that are the healthy decisions in terms of the products we're going to use, but we also may have to bulk that up by using mechanical means. You mentioned, air filtration and air purification. Sometimes I tell a client, listen, we're going to do all of this because they say, I'm extremely chemically sensitive.
Yeah.
Here's my challenges. And I said, okay, well, here's how we're going to think about it.
Yeah.
Everything is important here.
Yeah.
Everything. Going to make the decisions on the coatings and the sealers and all those products you're going to use. And then on top of that, we're going to do this other stuff too. And a lot of people think about that and they do that already. And when I hear that, I'm so happy because I know they're doing everything they possibly can.
Yeah.
If I were to say one thing to a client, I would say, make sure your air quality is as good as it can be.
I would agree.
Your HVA system, all of that stuff that's moving your air around your place, do a good job with that. That's such a good thing to think about and a good first step. And then make that kind of the goal, Here's the goal.
Yeah.
We want to make this air as breathable and as safe for everybody in our family, from grandpa to baby Joe.
Yeah.
Right?
It's true. It's the greatest gift. One of the greatest gifts you give yourself is an air purification system, whether it's a portable one or a whole house. It doesn't really matter, just that you're addressing it. And we take over 20,000 breaths a day. It is our life force energy. But because we don't see it, just like traditional building products, we don't see the off-gassing. We don't see the VOC and the benzene and the toluene and the ammonia and the acetone. We don't see those things in the air.
Right.
So we just say, oh, well, that must be healthy. It must not be harming us because we can't see it. But we're breathing those in. That's our breath. And that is our life energy. So yeah, I think Ron and I could give you a strong second on that. I mean, indoor air quality, that's what this is all about. It's all coming down to indoor air quality. And well, let me just ask you this question, because we used to get asked this all the time. Jay, how long do my products off gas? Okay, so if I do have a toxic product or even a little bit of VOCs, how long for the paint to off gas? How long will I be breathing in those chemicals?
Yeah, so here are the qualifying factors around that. First one is, what are we decorating first? We got to know what that is. And then secondly, we got to know what the environmental conditions are while the work's being performed. Is it cold, hot, humid, dry? Those are important conditions. The application of the products is an important condition too. How thickly are we applying the coats? Are we recoating it prematurely? All of those lead to what I call the two events. So the two events are the initial, what I call the volatility event. That's where all the most volatile things are evaporating. So what's that mean? Well, when you're in a project and you're got painting going on, that's when you're going to smell, the odors are going to be more strong during that volatility period. That lasts, depending on environmental conditions, that can last anywhere for 24 hours, as short as 24 hours, to up to 3 or 4 or 5 days. And then what happens in kind of a bell curve diagram, then that volatility drops off. But what's going on after that is what I call curing. And that's where the coating is actually getting harder and more durable and really kind of settling down and getting to the point where it's going to perform like everyone expects it to perform. How long is that? Typically, under everything being equal, it's about 2 to 3 weeks. Now, here's the qualifier to that. Your personal chemical sensitivity threshold. For some people, I've had people who have used our products and heard of others who can be in a space within a day. And then there's people who are on the other end where even though it's gone through 2 or 3 weeks and we feel like it's fully cured and everyone did the right thing, there's still a little bit of emission in there. So there's no hard, well, I'm making a short story long. There's no simple answer to that question. What you need to do is you need to maintain your environment post installation. So what are we doing? We're keeping it warm. We're keeping it dry. We're keeping it ventilated. If we've got mechanical means to do that, turn them on. We're going to run those babies until we feel that we've gone through the cycle properly. The challenge here with this is that you may not smell something.
Right.
The odor may be gone.
Right. Yeah.
But depending on your threshold, you may still be having some symptoms that would tell you something's still going on here.
Yeah. Let's talk about some of those symptoms. We've got watery eyes, maybe a headache, a lot of allergy kind of type symptoms, right? We've got, give us some more, nausea.
Yes, nausea, fatigue is a big one.
Mm-hmm.
What I call brain fog.
Yeah.
You're foggy. You don't know what's going on here. You're kind of slipping a little bit. You start to forget stuff.
You're like, ooh, my kitchen looks amazing.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Right. It's that new home smell. We got used to loving it and thinking it was such a good thing, but it's chemicals. It's chemicals off gassing. It's VOCs, volatile organic compounds, that are off gassing into the air at room temperature, and they're forming gases and we're breathing that in. That's what it is. So we've got to learn that's not a good smell when we're talking about, and Jay, give us a couple chemicals that are typically found in, say, sealants and paints and adhesives. What are the most prominent chemicals?
Yeah, well, obviously, we named the big ones: formaldehyde. You can see toluene, benzene, some vinyl acetates. You can see phthalates has kind of become a big discussion point for ingredients. Those are pretty much the big ones. Ammonia or derivatives of ammonia. I don't think any manufacturer would say, yeah, I'm pouring ammonia into my coating, but they can use what's called an amine, which is a related family member of, in fact, one of my products, Hard Seal. Yeah. You guys have used Hard Seal at all? If you remember, it has kind of a sharp smell. And I've had some people say, yeah, it smells like ammonia in there. Oh. And it's not, but it's related. It's one of those amine chemicals is related to ammonia. So it gives you a little sense that it's got a little ammonia in it, but it doesn't. Okay. And I have to kind of walk people through that.
Right. Like aldehydes,
Aldehydes, yep.
Aldehydes. Mm-hmm. And I think something interesting too that I learned in working with you guys and back then, that the manufacturer can say, oh, we don't have formaldehyde in this product, but there can be ingredients that form formaldehyde together.
Precursors.
Right? That happens in laundry detergent with 1,4-dioxane is a byproduct of the ethoxylation process. And people think, oh, I'm not getting this cancer-causing chemical called 1,4-dioxane, but it can be being formed in that process. So that's a lot of greenwashing that happens in the industry.
Probably a good segue. So Jay, everyone today they want zero or low VOC paint, but VOCs are only like one component of a coating. Every ingredient must be enhanced or evaluated for its effect on your health. Can you explain to us some of the misconceptions related to VOCs and what they are?
So the VOC regulation was created by the EPA many years ago, and it was really designed to help us fight outdoor air pollution. We wanted to cut down on the ozone production, known as smog production, which was a good thing.
Sure. Yeah.
And so there was a list of ingredients that were the EPA website. There was over 300 of them. And if that particular ingredient were to evaporate in the atmosphere and mix with nitrous oxides, compounds in the air, that would recreate low-level ozone. We don't want that. So we're going to list those as VOCs. A lot of those ingredients are toxic. We don't want to be around them. But the rule wasn't really focused on the toxicity related to human health. What that allows for now is for exemption. There are exemptions to regulation. What we call them now is hazardous air pollutants. The whole discussion about safety in these coatings was all driven by zero VOC goal. We want to make everything zero. And if we get to zero, everything's going to be fine. And it was a huge step forward. Absolutely sure, for sure. But what was missing was this exemption thing, these hazardous air pollutants. And it's disturbing to clients because they will buy a zero VOC product and then determine after they've installed it that there's something wrong. That's zero. Why is this happening? And
it's frustrating.
Because they feel like I've done my due diligence. I figured it out. I did my research and this is supposed to work for me, but it's not. And why? I'm constantly repeating the story. It's like, well, there are exemptions to the rules.
Exemptions meaning other VOCs, or are you talking about just other chemicals?
The other chemicals, the hazardous air pollutants that aren't regulated by the VOC regulator.
Right. Yeah. I think that's the biggest thing about AFM, because you guys actually don't have those other chemicals in there.
Zero.
Zero. So you're low and zero VOC paints like other manufacturers, but where you really differ is that you go the next step and say, we're not going to put harmful toxic chemicals in our products, right? Not just your paints, but your sealants, your adhesives, all of that.
That was all the homework we did so far, so long ago. The challenge was we had to make it safe, but we also had to make sure that it worked.
Yeah.
You remember in
just paint with water, right, Jay? That doesn't work.
Yeah. In the early days of the movement, there was a lot of products that came out really quickly, and they probably weren't vetted as well as they could have been by the manufacturers. And unfortunately, in the early days, a lot of the green products got black eyes because people went to use them and they weren't performing like they expected them to perform. And so the contractors that were trying to get involved with it just said, hey, I don't want to have anything to do with that. I can't work with it. It's not going to hold up and my reputation suffers and the client's unhappy. And that'll probably lead us to another question, I know, because...
Let's go there. So what are your suggestions when you are hiring and engaging contractors? What works? What doesn't? What should someone do who's trying to build a healthy or do a healthy remodel?
As I was coming into work this morning, I was riding my bike into work. By the way, I've got an electric bike and it's very cool.
Wow.
I see them all over. They look so fun.
It's fun. Yeah. Anyway, I was writing and I think about the podcast today and I thought, you know what? And I've been thinking about this for a while. What I would love, and I'm going to write this and I will share it with you as soon as I finish it, because I'm having my legal team kind of make sure that I'm not putting myself in deep water, because it's going to be very short and sweet. And basically what it's going to say is, and you know this happens all the time too, a client will engage a contractor and the contractor will sit with them and say, yeah, I'll do everything you want. And then for reason X, Y, and Z, they make a substitution decision that the client didn't approve. Here's a good example. I talked to a client yesterday on the phone. Contractor said they were going to do water-based floor finish and they used an oil-based floor finish. The client was not on site. They were living other places. So the contractor didn't have to worry about them maybe coming over to see what was going on. They come over to the house and this oil urethane is blowing them away.
Wow.
Wow. You're scaring our producer.
Wait, that actually happened to our producer. Yes, Spencer, I would literally remember that.
Yeah. So with this, and you may scare away a lot of contractors. They're going to look at this little, paragraph and they're going to say, hey, I'm not going to do that. But basically what the paragraph says is, we believe them to be as good as the products you plan to use. So we're going to request that you use these products. We've made a decision on products. We've vetted products, and we think these products will replace whatever you're planning to use. If you do not use these products or make substitutions without our permission, our arrangement is off.
Oh, that's great. Like a disclaimer. Yeah.
It's basically saying either you're going to do it the way we want you to do it or not. Now, there are contractors, they're going to walk away from that because they don't want to be forced into a position where they have to use something they're not familiar with, which is always sad to me because I'm thinking, guys, gals, whoever you are, add these ideas to your toolkit.
Yeah. Become better.
Because more and more people, they're going to be listening to the Healthy Hacks podcast, and they're going to hear about this stuff, and they're going to say, wait a minute, I need a contractor that's on board.
Right.
And if
it
the
contractor too, think about the exposure that the contractors have to all these chemicals.
Yes.
Yeah. It's like,
if the contractor understands that they can add this as a part of what they offer their clients, they're just going to get more business because more and more people are going to ask them for it.
Exactly. It's a no-brainer.
And they don't want to look like they're dumb. They don't want to act like they don't know what's going on. Unfortunately, as you know, and I understand, the contractors get very myopic. They've worked with a certain set of coatings and they trust them and they know how to bid jobs and they know what to expect. And you ask them to do something that's off the page, and all of a sudden their 30 years of experience just went out the window.
Right. Yeah.
I don't frankly quite understand that. I've always kind of come to it with the idea, if you're a craftsman and after 30 years, you should probably be a pretty good one.
Yeah.
You're not going to be thrown off by being asked to use a product that you're maybe not familiar with.
Yeah.
You would say, oh, well, okay, I need to learn a little bit about that. What do I need to do? I need to play a little bit.
And do you offer a lot of support for the contractors or videos or any kind of assistance?
We absolutely will. They don't come to us as much because, as you know, it's growing, it's good. But contractors think of green building projects as one-offs.
Oh, okay.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to do this job. I'm going to suck it up and then I'll never do it again, or I don't care about it.
Yeah.
And so we don't have a lot of contractors reaching out, hey, train me, teach me, tell me. Partly because they don't want to admit it. They don't want to admit they don't know it.
Oh.
Right? Yeah.
Right.
So I don't want to beat up contractors. There's a lot of really good, conscientious people out there that are doing really good stuff.
Right.
Well, that's a good segue. Instead of beating up contractors, let's beat up the people. So I'm curious.
Why do we have to beat anyone up?
Oh, actually, don't beat up anyone. But how about, so what areas do people mess up the absolute most in terms of like adding pollutants into their home and ultimately into the air they breathe? Like, for example,
what's a big snafu, Jay, that you see a lot? Like formaldehyde in cabinetry to me is just such another pink elephant. Everybody is so focused on how things are going to look, and our homes should be beautiful, but they don't even think about what's behind that MDF and things like that. Would you say it's cabinetry or is it flooring, or where do the pollutants get hidden?
It's the big stuff. Again, like we said earlier, it's the big stuff. It's the skin. It's the walls, ceilings, floors. Those are the big ones. Those are the big polluting challenges, right? Cabinets are another big one too. The other problem there that I see is, and this goes to the question we discussed earlier, and that is, how long does it take something to cure? And a lot of contractors just give a boilerplate answer. They'll say, oh, don't worry, I'm going to use this product. Yeah, it's toxic, off gas. In a couple of weeks, you'll be fine. This was the case with the flooring problem I mentioned earlier. The contractor said, oh, I'm sorry, I used an oil. Why did I use oil? Because I really like it. It looks good. It goes down easy. I know what's going to do. And don't worry, it'll be fine after 2 weeks.
Right.
It's been a month and it's not fine.
Yeah. The family has breathed in those chemicals.
Well, they're not there. They have the luxury of being off-site. Okay. All right. But a lot of clients are not off-site.
Yeah. No, I think most people are still living in their homes.
They're stuck. They're stuck.
They're stuck. Yeah. And that's what we're talking about because, okay, in 2 weeks you go, gosh, everything's fine. I don't smell it anymore. But what was the long-term effect from that chemical exposure? Yeah.
It goes back to source the source, the basic sources that we talked earlier in the podcast. It's about making those source decisions, making the safest source decision. So what are we talking about source? Well, if you're talking about cabinets, what are we building them out of?
Yeah.
Right? Can we afford wood, solid wood?
Solid wood.
We can make accommodations for some combination. Usually it's MDF, which is holding up the veneers, right? So can we deal with the MDF? Yeah, AFM's got a solution for that. We can deal with MDF.
Is there a sealant that AFM offers that can be put over existing cabinetry that has MDF?
Yeah, there is. In fact, there's two.
Which product?
There's two.
Okay, what would that be?
Okay, the one you don't know about is the one that we make now called Eco-Lac.
Oh, okay. I don't know about that.
Which was our clear furniture.
In the show notes.
Yeah.
Eco-Lac. Okay.
Eco-Lac. LACQ. Eco-LACQ.
Okay.
If you remember back in the Green Nest days, we had the coating we still do called Acrylac.
Yes.
Which was our furniture and cabinet finish. Well, we had so much demand for a paint version of that.
Oh, okay. Nice.
We took Acrylac into the lab and we tweaked it to turn it into a base so we could tint it. So now you can paint your cabinets with Eco-Lac, which is going to give you that lacquer hardness and durability, which paint would never do. I don't know, maybe right at the end of your tenure, we had the product called cabinet and trim enamel.
Yes, I remember.
Do you remember that?
Yeah.
It was pretty good, but it wasn't good enough, and it just wasn't hard enough. And if you got into really saturated colors, got dark cabinets, the pigment load in there was making the film softer or longer than it wanted to be. And people were complaining that just wasn't durable enough. And so we said, okay, back up, back out. We didn't have anything. We weren't recommended for years. We weren't making anything from Safecoat for cabinets, for painted cabinets.
For painted cabinets. Okay.
Yep. And then we came up with Eco-Lac. And now Eco-Lac is kind of where we go when people want to paint a cabinet and they want to go over an old finish or a new finish.
Yeah. Is that one of those paints? Do you have to sand it? Or is that one of the paints?
That's a good question. Anytime you're doing that kind of work and you're going, an old coating is in the way, we've got to prep it. And the best way to prep it is mechanically.
Okay.
You scuff it up.
Yeah. Okay.
You scuff it up with steel wool or light sandpaper.
Right.
And then if you're going over an old coating, you want to prime it to set the stage because we want good adhesion. We don't want any adhesion challenges.
We don't want bubbles.
Yeah. So we prime and then we paint.
That's very labor intensive, but you want it to look good. And those are your cabinets. Still cheaper than getting new cabinets. And boy, just painting the cabinets really can change a whole house.
It's a big deal.
Yeah. The Acrylac, did that have a shine to it?
Yes. Comes in 3 versions: gloss, satin, and matte.
So if someone has a stained cabinet and they want to seal it, is that the product?
Yes.
It's a wood. Say they're not going to paint it. They just want to seal it. They don't want to paint it.
Yeah. Typically, there's a couple of things. Somebody has a stained and clear finish cabinet. They just want to do that again.
They want to seal it. Like let's say they want to seal in the off-gassing. Okay.
Yeah. So it's fairly simple. I mean, basically you go in, you scuff up the old coating and you put on Acrylac. Okay. That's something we always got asked. So to recap, because I said this earlier, but it's worth saying again, virtually all of your products create a barrier through this molecular bonding that actually seals in the off-gassing of the substrates under it. So if you just moved into a new home, I got sick from a newly remodeled home, your products would have helped me back then. And you want to seal in that off-gassing, you can do it. You can seal in the off-gassing of your walls, your flooring, your cabinetry. Am I missing anything? No, you've nailed it. That's exactly correct.
Okay.
That's exactly correct.
So I wanted to wrap that up because I know we got into a lot of chemicals, but at the end of the day, we're really talking about you don't have to be building a brand new green home to make your home healthy. You can work with your existing home and take care of these problems without spending an arm and a leg. So I really want to leave listeners with that and empower them.
I think that's really important. The other thing I would just add to the discussion about how you understand what a product's supposed to do for you. We have a program and other manufacturers do as well. But I stress this, if whenever you're making decisions about coatings, try to leave enough time to get samples from the manufacturer.
Okay, samples.
To try those out with your own family. What I do in my family is I have a piece of glass. I use an inert surface because I don't want any reaction to the surface. I just want to test the coating. I will put that coating on my piece of glass. I will let that dry for at least 24 hours before I expose myself to it. My exposure myself to it is I will put it up to my nose and I will take a big whiff of it. The other thing I do is I sleep with it. I know it sounds strange.
Does your wife get jealous?
Very much so. She's sleeping with a piece of wood next door.
He is literally he's married to his work. Okay, this brings that to
we put it on our nightstand, and then we'll try to determine whether or not we're okay with that. Now, of course, my whole house and our offices are all safe coated, so I don't really do that much anymore. But occasionally I'm asked a question about another coating, and I always like to test other coatings, and both good and bad, and say, hey, what's going on with that? Because I have to say, honestly, I've sold other brands. In some situations, I know of a brand that I think is better than mine, and I will tell people about it because I know how I am. I want someone to got to give me the lowdown. I don't want to be sold something. I had a customer the other day said, why aren't you trying to sell me your product? Well, you didn't give me a chance. You did, but I couldn't do it. I have to tell you, I know about this other product, and I think maybe you should go look at them. And they're like, oh, that's so great. And I know, and you know this, it's all about trust. Right? If someone trusts you, then they remember trust. The trust can be in short supply these days sometimes, right? And so once you make that established, you create that level of trust. I know that person's going to remember me, and they're going to come back to me like they remembered you guys. They come back to you because you got that trust built. That's the key.
Perfect example, Jay. We trusted you from the beginning. I want to thank you too. A long time ago in Green Nest, I seriously did call you frequently and ask you questions that customers are throwing at us, and there wasn't a better person than you to relay the answer back to them, because there's some complicated situations. And we really appreciate you for not only doing that, we always appreciate AFM too, but we also appreciate you for being on the show today. You're absolutely just super. You're like an encyclopedia of information. I hope everyone enjoyed this show too, and I hope you learned a ton. And don't forget to visit afmsafecoat.com for your next building or remodeling project.
Yes, thank you, Jay. We loved having you. And you guys can hear Jay on his own podcast, Non-Toxic Environments, if you want to hear more from Jay. And I'm going to put in the show notes, we didn't get a chance to talk about it, but they offer on their website, AFM Safecoat, a project quick spec. It's just a sheet you print out, and you can find your project, whether you're working on carpeting, roofing, foundations, paint, floors, walls, and they'll list the products under that category that you need that are the non-toxic solutions. So it's like a cheat sheet for your home and project. I will put that in the show notes. Head to ronandlisa.com/podcast for all of the links that we discussed today. And we will see you on the next episode. Get ready to find out what the heck is going on in your home. Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
This episode of the Healthy Home Hacks podcast has ended, but be sure to subscribe for more healthy living strategies and tactics to help you create the healthy home you've always dreamed of. And don't forget to rate and review so we can continue to bring you the best content. See you on the next episode.